Chapter 7. The Mist-Touched Path. The mist had a texture to it. Not just air made visible, but something almost tactile, like breathing in cobwebs spun from forgotten dreams. It clung to Amuro's skin, nestling into the folds of his cloak and armor like it belonged there, like it had always been waiting. He paused at the edge of a shattered stone bridge that seemed to vanish into the pale ether. The world beyond was a silhouette of half-built ruins and melted trees, all softened by fog that shimmered faintly with an inner light. Elyra stepped beside him, her boots silent against the cracked obsidian. The runes on her gloves flickered uneasily. "This place, it shouldn't exist anymore," she said softly, eyes scanning the horizon. "And yet here it is," Amuro replied, tightening his grip on the hilt of his blade. "Like the rest of this cursed maze." The mist-touched path stretched before them, an in-between place where time had begun to fray. Amuro could feel it in the way his memories itched, as though something were peeling through them like pages of an unfinished book. They walked in silence, the fog distorting sound, making each footstep echo like it came from someone else. Above, ghostly shapes flitted behind clouds, perhaps birds, perhaps something else entirely. Suddenly, the terrain changed. The crumbling stones beneath their feet gave way to soft, moss-covered steps leading downward. They followed the path until the mists parted, revealing a forgotten village, what remained of the order of the Dream Wardens. Charred wood, collapsed towers, bones draped in ceremonial armor. All of it blanketed in eerie calm. Amuro crouched beside a shattered totem, a stone spear wrapped in faded cloth. "These markings," he whispered. "They match the ones on that old dream binder we found in the cathedral." Elyra nodded. The Dream Wardens watched the borders between thoughts. When the Echo War began, they tried to hold the veil in place. They failed. Inside one of the broken huts, they discovered a runic forge, still intact, its crystal core dim but functional. Amuro placed a cracked metal plate onto the altar and began drawing runes in charcoal, whispering fragments of old incantations he barely understood. The blade at his side pulsed in resonance. With each breath, his hands moved faster, automatic, guided by something else. A thread of knowledge stolen from the parasite of many echoes now intertwined with his instincts. A new construct emerged from the forge, a trap, shaped like a lotus of black iron and silver veinwork. "Threadpulse snare," he muttered. "It reacts to shifts in conscious thought." "Will it hold a memory eater?" Elyra asked. "We'll find out soon enough." They continued deeper into the ruins, discovering a hollow tree grown from obsidian branches. Inside, Elyra found an old pendant. The chain was rusted, but the gem pulsed with something ancient. "This wasn't made here," she murmured. "It's older than the Dream Wardens. Maybe even older than the threads themselves. Does it still work? Only one way to find out." As she placed it around her neck, the fog around them rippled, and suddenly the air shifted. Everything stopped. From behind a veil of violet mist, a figure emerged, tall, draped in robes that bled into the fog. No face. Just a reflective mask, rippling like water. The being spoke, but the voice was not sound. It was thought, pressed directly into their minds. "You walk paths once closed. Carry echoes not yours. Answer now, do you seek to bind the weave, or unravel it?" Amuro stepped forward, his rune-marked hand glowing. "We seek truth, whatever it costs." A long silence followed, broken only by the whisper of mist curling around their feet. "Then truth you shall have," the voice answered. "But it does not come freely." The fog thickened. The landscape twisted. And from all directions, shadows began to move. Amuro didn't flinch. The moment the shadows broke from the mist, he was already moving, blade drawn, echo energy pulsing along its edge. The figures that emerged weren't whole, not entirely. Shattered silhouettes. Fragments of once living people caught between memory and oblivion. Some bore the armor of fallen Dream Wardens. Others were less recognizable, fluid in form, eyes burning like coals, mouth stitched shut by threads of silver. "Wraiths of forgotten names," Elyra murmured, stepping back to back with Amuro, her hands crackling with ward light. Their echoes pulled too long from the weave. "Hungry. Let them try," Amuro growled. The first came fast, a flickering blur of cloth and bone. Amuro's blade intercepted it mid-leap, slicing through its incorporeal body. But instead of falling, the thing reformed, snarling without breath. Elyra raised her hand and drew a sigil in the air. Lumine thread, break. A burst of violet light surged from her palm, and the wraith's form twisted, screaming without sound before bursting apart into dust. But there were more. Dozens. Hundreds. The pair fought like they had done it in another life. Every motion was precise, deliberate, synchronized. Amuro carved pathways of light through the mist, while Elyra shattered wraiths with sigils and radiant pulses. Still, they were being driven back. A low hum vibrated the ground, an echo wave building beneath their feet. "They're pulling the mist tighter," Elyra shouted. "They're trying to isolate us. Then we break the net." Amuro reached into his belt and pulled free the threadpull snare. He slammed it into the ground, whispering the activation phrase. The petals of the lotus snapped open, releasing a pulse of raw, oscillating energy. The mist parted in a perfect ring. The wraiths halted, shuddering violently, before dissolving like smoke in wind. Silence returned, but it was thick with weight. The fog trembled now, disturbed, as if the path itself were aware of their defiance. From the far end of the ruined village, something vast stirred. Not a creature. Not a structure. A memory. One so ancient and massive it cast shadows across time. They turned toward it, and saw the edges of an impossible building rising through the fog, a spiraling ziggurat of bone and light, its foundation pulsing with glyphs in a language that had never been spoken aloud. Elyra exhaled slowly. "The thread spindle. You know it?" Amuro asked. "Only from dreams," she whispered. "I thought it was symbolic. A metaphysical center of the echo realms. But it's real." The ziggurat's top flickered, and at its peak stood a figure, tall, still, wrapped in a cloak of stars. He raised a staff made from the spine of something not quite human. "Is that another echo?" Amuro asked, voice low. "No," Elyra said. "That's a weaver. One of the originals." The figure raised his arm. Threads of light snapped outward, forming a web across the sky. In that instant, Amuro's blade pulsed violently, and something within him, some dormant instinct, awoke. Visions hit him like thunder. He stood on the ziggurat's peak, weeping blood into the void. Elyra's body, covered in glowing runes, dissolving into threads of pure thought. A great machine beneath the earth, powered by stolen memory, ticking toward annihilation. His own face reflected in the mask of the Nameless Weaver. He staggered, gasping. "We're close," he said. "Too close. The echoes, they're bleeding in." Elyra reached out, steadying him. "We have to finish this, before the weave collapses entirely." Amuro nodded, blinking away the echoes. "Then we climb." Together, they approached the base of the ziggurat. The mists thinned here, though the air was heavier, each breath laced with age and consequence. As they ascended the first tier, they passed statues worn down to suggestion. Faces half erased. Eyes filled with grief. Names too damaged to be read. By the third tier, their surroundings shifted again. No longer stone, but memory made solid. Doors to rooms that no longer existed opened and shut around them. They saw themselves in passing, doppelgangers frozen mid-decision, caught in moments that never happened. "This is the thread's defense," Elyra said. "It's showing us every path we could have taken. Trying to slow us down. It won't work." They pressed on, together. Higher. Toward the apex where the Nameless Weaver waited. And somewhere deep inside the spindle, something stirred. A seed of will. Not Amuro's. Not Elyra's. But something that had been watching since the beginning. And it was finally ready to act. As they climbed toward the ziggurat summit, each step felt heavier, not physically, but existentially. The air warped around them, making Amuro's memories flicker like candlelight. One moment he recalled the dungeon's descent, the next he saw himself as a child, holding a sword far too large for his hands. Elyra stumbled for the first time. She gritted her teeth, placing a hand on one of the glyph-etched stones. "It's not just showing us paths," she said. "It's pulling on them, testing which one might break us. Then it can keep pulling." Amuro turned, offering his hand. "We're not breaking. She took it. Together they reached the 7th step, the final tier before the summit. Here the ground pulsed like a heartbeat. Light and shadow no longer obeyed logic. The sun rose and set in seconds. Their reflections walked beside them, but out of sync, like echoes with minds of their own. They passed a cracked mirror floating above a pedestal. In it, Amuro saw himself not as he was, but as he could become. His eyes glowed with cold fire, the revenant blade fused with his arm. Around him, people knelt, worship or fear, it wasn't clear. He looked like a god, or a tyrant. He looked away. "Do you ever wonder," Elyra whispered, "what we'd be if we hadn't made the choices we did? Every damn day." At the summit, they found the Nameless Weaver waiting. He stood at the center of an unfurled loom of threads that reached into the stars and down into the abyss. Threads of fate, thought, memory, and dream. They shifted constantly, weaving themselves around his fingers as if alive. His face was masked by a veil of black silk, behind which countless eyes blinked and faded. "You've come far," he said, voice a blend of 10,000 whispers. "Too far." Amuro stepped forward, blade drawn. "We're here to stop this. Whatever you're doing, rewriting the weave, collapsing echoes into the real, it ends now." "You misunderstand. I do not destroy the weave. I repair it." Elyra's expression darkened. "By consuming every alternate path? By rewriting lives until they forget what they were?" The weaver tilted his head. "Choice breeds corruption. Infinite options birth infinite chaos. My work is purification. One story. One truth." "No," Amuro said. "You don't get to decide that." The weaver raised his hand, and the threads surged. Reality fractured. The summit split into 1,000 mirrored versions. Amuro and Elyra were pulled apart across possibility. Each saw the other in different forms. Elyra as a warden who never broke her oaths. Amuro as a father, a warlord, a martyr. Elyra dying in a prison cell. Amuro alone, swordless, forgotten. They screamed each other's names, but sound was devoured by the loom. Then, light. Blinding. Amuro reached into himself, calling forth the power gifted by the echo siphon. The memories of all he'd slain screamed within him. He channeled them not as weapons, but as anchors. Each soul a thread. Each thread a proof of who he was, what he'd survived. Reality buckled, then snapped back into place. He stood on the summit again, Elyra beside him, her eyes glowing with sigils of ward light. She too had pulled herself free. "Enough," Amuro said, stepping toward the weaver. "You're not a god. You're just another echo afraid to fade." The weaver moved faster than thought. Tendrils of memory shot forward, aiming for Amuro's heart, but he didn't block. He stepped through the assault, blade gleaming, and cut through the threads directly. The loom cried out. The sky fractured. The weaver staggered as the entire structure began to collapse. Time unraveled in spirals. Stars blinked out. The summit tore itself apart. But the pair stood firm. "You can't kill me," the weaver rasped, threads falling like dying leaves. "We don't need to," Elyra said. She raised a crystal of pure memory, drawn from the parasite below the cathedral. She shattered it. A pulse spread in every direction. Instead of ending the weaver, it released him, scattering his echoes across the loom. Each one free to become a new thread, not bound by his control. He collapsed, mask breaking into dust. The loom went still. Then the summit became silent. Not empty. Not broken. Just still. Amuro lowered his blade. Elyra knelt, breathing hard. "Did we win?" she asked softly. "I don't think that's what this was." "Then what?" "A choice." He looked at the horizon. The mists were thinning. Below them, the dungeon wasn't collapsing. It was rebuilding, reweaving itself into something stable. "I think we stopped the infection," Amuro said. "But the weave isn't healed." "Not yet." Elyra nodded, slowly standing. "Then we keep going." Their eyes met. No words were needed. The revenant blade hummed softly on his back. The echo siphon flickered with fragments of future paths. And in the distance, the dungeon's next level opened, a gate carved from obsidian and bone, through which new challenges waited. And far beneath all things, something else had awakened. Something older than memory. Something watching. Still watching. And waiting. As the winds at the summit faded, a strange calm settled over them. The fragmented loom still floated, broken, yet not entirely dead. Threads drifted like ghostly vines, vanishing into the mist above. Elyra leaned against a fractured pillar, wrapping a cloth around a shallow cut on her arm. Her breath was steadying, but her eyes stayed on Amuro. "That thing you said, about choice."
"Yeah,"
Amuro asked, kneeling to clean the blade now dull and chipped at its edges. "Do you ever wonder if the echo you could have been would have made a better decision?" "Every time I look in a mirror." He gave her a faint smile. "But then again, I wouldn't have made it here without you." She blinked, surprised by the sincerity, then smirked. "You're getting sentimental. You're getting predictable." "Fair." They sat in the fading quiet, letting silence speak what they didn't have the strength to put into words. A nearby flame guttered, casting long shadows over the ruins of the summit. The stars above began to reappear one by one, distant and unfamiliar. Suddenly, the ground trembled. Not violently, just enough to remind them that the dungeon lived still. Not as a threat, but as a being. "It's shifting again," Elyra murmured. "Preparing the next test," Amuro guessed. "Or the next lie." He stood and helped her up. Together, they approached the edge of the plateau where a narrow bridge of bone and silver thread had appeared, stretching toward a descending spiral staircase into darkness. Before they crossed, Elyra looked back one last time. "Do you think we're still ourselves?" Amuro didn't answer immediately. He stared at his hands, scarred, trembling, yet strong. "I think we're the versions that chose to keep going. That's enough for now." They stepped into the mists again. The thread of their path not severed, only knotted, ready to unravel new truths. And below, the dungeon whispered. "They walk again. Let the weave test them anew."